Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar live demonstration, CyberSaint crosswalking NIST 853 to AI CPA or the SOC 2 controls. My name is Ethan Bresnahan. I'm the marketing director here at CyberSaint, and today I'm excited to be joined by CyberSaint VP of Solutions Architecture, Steve Torino, and Senior Sales Engineer, Michael Blumreich. We're so glad that you could join us for today's webinar, and with that, I will hand things off to Steve.
Hi, my name is Steve Torino, and I'm Vice President of Solution Architecture here at CyberSaint. I want to thank you for attending this webinar and also provide some background information before we jump into a demonstration of the solution. Crosswalking has been a longstanding challenge in the industry. The reality is that organizations are subject to more than one cybersecurity framework or standard of practice, depending on things like the jurisdictions where they do business, the industries in which they participate, and the types of customers with whom they wish to do business. Most of these standards are covering domains and controls that overlap, at least to some extent. And in theory, this overlap should make things easier to the extent that we can kind of be sure we comply with the control from one framework. We should be able to map it to controls from another framework and know that we've satisfied that requirement as well. In practice, it's a bit more complicated. Although the controls across two or more frameworks may cover similar content, they often have subtle differences. So for example, let's take vulnerability scanning as an example. A framework like NIST might allow for the frequency of vulnerability scanning to be customized to an organization-defined frequency, whereas the corresponding control from another framework may specify the frequency at which vulnerability scans are to be run, so something like once a week or once a month. Yes, those controls do map to each other, but the subtle difference in frequency makes them not an exact match. Another example could be control inheritance. So most of us by now are probably using some cloud services to operate our business. One of the benefits that comes with that is inheriting certain security controls, such as server patching and an infrastructure as a service model, for example. However, there are other controls for which a shared accountability model applies. In other words, we might inherit part of a control from a CSP, but still have to demonstrate requirements around things like maybe access controller configurations in-house. So what's really critical here is to understand the gap between any two frameworks. And organizations have taken various approaches to finding these gaps or doing crosswalks in order to make their lives easier, because as anybody who's done these exercises knows, it can be really challenging and time consuming. Larger, more complex organizations might roll out something like a large common controls framework, or basically a superset of sorts that can be manually applied across dozens or hundreds of frameworks even. And others might try a method like to rely on the limited set of publicly available crosswalks that are published by authoritative sources like CIS, AICPA, even the informative references to the CSF from NIST. Unfortunately, this is very limited and not available for most frameworks at all. And yet others might work with consultants, bring consultants in and have an engagement to do the crosswalking that they need. What you're going to see today is a demonstration of CyberSaint's unique approach to crosswalking. So whether it's an example of how we can leverage pre-published templates to automate those industry accepted mappings just at the click of a button, or how to use our patented natural language processing technology to create your own templates from any framework to any other framework by identifying control associations with AI provided confidence levels, you're going to see a real world solution that's been custom built to automate the manual and time consuming process of crosswalking controls across frameworks. I hope you enjoy the demo.
In order to go through a crosswalking process within the CyberStrong solution, we're going to start in the administration area. So to get there, we're going to click on administration here in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. You'll by default be taken to the manage assessments page, which is where you can kick off the crosswalk process. So in order to get this started, we're first going to identify which assessment we want to crosswalk from. In this case, I'm going to be crosswalking from this assessment, which is targeting the 853 Rev 5 framework. In order to kind of start the process, we're going to reference the actions column, and we're going to, again, leverage this assessment, and we're going to be clicking on the crosswalk assessment icon. From here, you're able to make a selection in terms of which framework you're going to crosswalk into to generate a net new assessment. In this case, I'm going to be leveraging the AICPA Trust Services criteria, and this is going to be kind of a full offering from a SOC 2 perspective. So I'm going to select that as my crosswalk. The next step is selecting your mappings. So you can do this within our crosswalking, our natural language processing models leverage for crosswalks. We're pulling back confidence scores, and essentially you can select, okay, only want mappings that are over 80%, 90%. You can also choose your own mappings, or if there are other templates available, you'd be able to select that here. I'm going to choose an empty template. Now, next, you can go through control by control and choose your mappings based on those confidence scores, or you can choose the option of adding top mapping for each control. That's what I'm going to do here. And then from there, you can go through and say, okay, in this case, there are no mappings, next control. Let's see, here we go. So I can add additional mappings if I want. So in this case, because we have additional confidence scores, and you can go through control by control and go through this process. But the top mappings have already been added, so you can definitely skip ahead to the next and final step. So here I'm going to provide a name for the new assessment. In this case, it will be NIST 2. And one last selection is, do I want to sync the assessment or not, or sync the crosswalk or not? So essentially what this is going to do, if I sync it, is it's going to tie the parent and child assessment together to where any change made to the parent assessment will roll down to that child assessment. In this case, I'm not going to select it, but I will show you what a sync crosswalk looks like momentarily. I'll submit this. And just in a couple of seconds, we have a 53% project completed assessment. So between the confidence score available as well as the mappings, this is a very auditable process. So if I go into a map control, we can see the crosswalk history, and these are the controls from NIST that map back into A1.1.3. Now you'll notice here I have the ability to make changes at the control level. So this is an unsynced version. A synced version, the only way that differs is if I go to the synced assessment, instead of making changes directly at the child level here, I can do this if I unsync the control, or any changes made at that parent level. In this case, for CM-8-9, I can shift this to non-compliant. And if I go back to our child control, you'll notice this automatically changes from yes to no. So lending towards the the idea of assess once and apply to many. So whether you are leveraging the synced or non-synced crosswalk, this really does add efficiency and effectiveness to your compliance efforts, especially as it pertains to assessing against multiple frameworks within your organization.
Thank you, everyone, for attending today's webinar. As always, if you're interested in learning more about CyberSaint's AI-backed crosswalking capabilities, please feel free to reach out, info@cybersaint.io, or visit us at cybersaint.io. We'll see you soon.